this doesn't work. Um, Goals for today. We're going to start our project. So we need to set up a session for the cover project, the remake project. We're going to import a resource track, meaning the original song. Um, with that, we need to trim off any silence that might be on it. So we're going to learn how to do that with a technique called tab to transients. This is a function within Pro Tools. We're going to find the tempo, which is not necessarily going to be perfect. That's why I call it the ballpark method. And we're going to use a technique or a function called tap tempo within Pro Tools. And as a reminder, you do need to disable elastic audio, which is an interesting thing. Pro Tools doesn't work like that, but apparently Pro Tools first does. And we'll just start by putting in a quick drum beat, because I think starting with drums is good. Okay, so I'm at the Pro Tools dashboard. I've already started Pro Tools. We're not working from a template, so make sure that is unclicked. We're going to call this cover with your last name, please. A cover is a remake. A remake is a cover, kind of. Easier to type cover. Hit create. Blank edit window. Okay, so what we need to do first is I have downloaded the song that I want. It's an MP3 format. You'll have yours as well. I'm going to come up to, it's in my downloads folder, file and import. And then I'm going to find in my downloads folder that I'm going to work with Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, because someone chose that song and I figured I'd get going on it. So this processing, it's converting from MP3 to a 48 kilohertz sample rate WAV file. Pro Tools works with waves and not MP3s. And it has created the track for me, okay? In order for you to hear it, this is what I think I need to make sure to remember to do. You don't need to do this. Ignore that. It's routing for the video. So notice that I am zoomed out quite a bit. This is 8 measures, so I can't be that close. I'm going to zoom in. I'm using Command and the bracket signs. The closed bracket is zoom in. The open bracket is zoom out. On a PC, that should be Control and the brackets. And I'm going to zoom in. This is enough, really, to talk about what I want to talk about. Yeah, I'm going to make my track a little bit bigger for the moment. Okay, so you can always come in here and make your tracks bigger. So I've imported the resource track. I am going to trim off the silence using tab to transients. All right, so what is a transient? A transient in audio is a high amplitude, a high volume, short sound, like a hit. That has a high transient. It is a quick spike in volume, more or less, that you see in a waveform. And the waveform is the visual representation of sound in a DAW. All right, this is a waveform. If I zoom in, you see more of the actual cycles of the wave. Those of you who've taken some physics, you know, you can literally see the amplitude of each little bit. But what's important to us is that as you see a high spike, that is a transient, and then as it ramps down, that would be called decay, as that sound goes away and disappears in volume. What are we going to use tab to transients to do? Well, instead of placing our cursor in front of a note and zooming in and making sure that we're perfectly aligned, we're going to use a function that does that automatically. Okay, so it advances your cursor, it moves your cursor forward to the nearest or the next spike in amplitude or transient with just a touch of a button, the tab key on your keyboard. And when you're doing a lot of this, it's really helpful. It doesn't work 100,000 times, 100% of the time, 100,000% of the time. But for this track, because kick, snare, it's super, it's just drums to start with. So I am going to be in slip mode. It's not critical for this, but I always say edit in slip mode. And I'm going to place my cursor. It's nearby. I didn't even need to. And what I need to do is come over to this button and turn it on. I hover over it. It's called tab to transients. That engages that function. If it's not clicked, it won't work for you. And in fact, when I hit tab, it's going to go all the way to the end of the song. So hit return, to the beginning, turn on tab to transients. I'm going to place my cursor really anywhere inside of this wave, inside of this track, and I'm going to hit the tab key on my keyboard. And it takes me right up to that kick drum. Now again, if you've got a full band playing or full music, sometimes you need to pay attention and you do need to move this manually. But especially for the beginning of a song, when it is actual silence, this works pretty well. If I hit it again, it's going to take me to that hi-hat, shaker, snare drum, shaker, kick, hi-hat, shaker. Interesting. Okay, so that's an example. What's over here? I have no idea. I could zoom in and probably find out. It doesn't really matter. I would need to hit it again to get the next one. So it doesn't work 100% of the time. So I'm back at the beginning, tab to transients. I want to cut this. So I'm going to go edit, separate clip at selection, which is basically cut it where my cursor is. I'm going to use Command E. That would be Control E on a PC. And I'm going to highlight this with the grabber and just hit delete and get rid of it. I'm going to grab the rest of it with the grabber and move it back to the beginning of the song. I want this kick drum to start on the downbeat meaning the first beat of the measure. And hopefully the next kick, so this would be kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, that should be lining up at measure 2, beat 1 of measure 2. And why isn't it? Well, it isn't because Billie Jean is not at 120 BPM. So we need to figure out the tempo of this song. We're not going to go to bpm.com. We're going to learn how to do it. So how we're going to do that, there's 3 steps, kind of. One is turning off the conductor. Rewind, quick rewind. Don't forget to disable elastic audio. So again, this is the reason I'm not used to it is this polyphonic thing is a setting. It's an algorithm for stretching and compressing audio, speeding up or slowing down its tempo. And it doesn't usually, in Pro Tools, it does not come, tracks don't usually just create themselves with this engaged. So I'm going to come over here to this little spike next to the word polyphonic, click on it, and I'm going to disable elastic audio, because as I change the tempo of the session, that's really just a wrapper for the actual tempo of the song. Now I'm going to turn off the conductor, make sure that it's off. I'm going to highlight the track with my grabber tool, grabber. I'm going to highlight the 120 that is in the MIDI controls. No conductor, highlight, highlight. Then when I press play, the space bar on my keyboard, I'm going to tap on the letter T on my keyboard, on my QWERTY keyboard, in order to on beat to the song, in rhythm. Because this is just kick, snare, you want to tap on those quarter notes. Kick, snare, okay? So, and once you do it about 4 times, you'll see the number in here register. But you do need to be on beat, all right? So this is a good test of your rhythm. And I got 117. I've actually done this a couple times. 117, look where my drums are, okay? So I'm expecting kick on 1, that's there. Snare on 2, that looks pretty close. And it's starting to drift a little late, drifting a little later, even a little later, okay? Anytime you see those drums pass the line. So I think 116 is closer. So I'm just going to enter that and hit return. You have to hit return or those changes don't register. And now you can see 1, 2, 3, much closer. Now, they're not going to be perfect. This one's a little late. This one looks back on. And how do I account for that? I say a human played these drums, and that's fine. You know, humans aren't perfect. In fact, that makes for a more human and a better, in my opinion, feel. Okay, so, but we've got a tempo, all right? We highlighted, and tapped. And we're just looking for a ballpark. We don't need this to be absolutely perfect. We are not going to be playing this track along with ours for our final output, our final product. This is a reference. We're going to, listen to it. We're going to say, oh, as I listen to it, when does stuff start playing? Okay, so the bass part starts at measure 3. Does this need to be perfectly lined up with beat 1 of measure 3? It doesn't. I need to know that I need to drop that bass right on beat 1 of measure 3. And I listen to it more. This is hi-hat, but I hear a shaker start there. My right ear panned. So, okay, you just want to have a general map of what to do when you're creating your song. So first thing I want to do is just put in a quick drum beat. So I'm going to go back up to track and new. I'm going to create this in stereo because I actually want to be able to play with the UVI workstation. So I'm just going to do this on a stereo track because that instrument's only available on stereo tracks. Audio, change to instrument. I'm going to name this right away because I'm going to start with drums. I'm going to hit the plus sign because I want you also always to make a stereo master fader. Okay, not a mono master fader, it's got to be stereo. And hit create. I'm going to insert in my insert A for my instruments. Okay, multi-channel, instrument, expand 2. Ignore this. This is just for me. And I'm going to choose a preset from the drum category. And I think I'm going to use session drums, number 10. Okay, so I already know kick, snare, pretty straightforward. So I can close this. Remember that you need to highlight the instrument that you want to put notes into the MIDI editor. So I'm going to open up the MIDI editor down here. I'm going to zoom vertically by clicking on this dot over here, this section. I'm going to give myself more room in the MIDI editor. So you can come down here, your cursor turns into kind of a shade, and you can raise that to get more. We're going to come back to that. That's what I wanted to show you, but I'm not doing it. You can also do that up here and give yourself less, more tracks, or such. So just remember, you have to highlight the track. So here, I can't hear anything. I can't input any notes, but I click there, and now I hear those drums. I'm going to click on my pencil tool, and I'm going to give myself a little bit more space. I'm also going to come up to next to the grid button, turns it on and off. The grid value, I'm going to click on 16ths again, which brings back still that uncertain why it only works that way. I'm going to put my kick on beat 1, which is C1. I'm going to put a snare on beat 2, kick, and snare. Okay, that's that, kick. I'm going to use that hi-hat, and I'm going to put in an 8th note. I think it's important to start with drums so that you have a basic beat behind you for the meat of the song. I wouldn't start necessarily with an intro. Well, I mean, I would, but I really want to kind of concentrate on where the whole song is. So, something that came up a lot with people. You forgot to change back to your edit tools. You come with the pencil and you click on your clip. That just changes the view, okay? This is waveform view. This is now notes view. You want it to be clips, all right? What that does, just did it again, it really just shows you the MIDI editor on a track. It's rather difficult to play with, in my opinion, to use, at least for most purposes. I'm going to go back to my edit tools. I'm going to highlight this one. And I know that that is a 1 measure loop. I know that the drums play for 1 measure, 2 measures, I should say, until the bass comes in. That drum beat still continues, and I can kind of just do that and edit it out a little bit or duplicate it out a little bit. If I want to come back here, and I'm not going to spend Up, there it is. All right, so I am quickly. So A3 at measure 3. Let me hear what that sounds like. Okay, it's also doing a eighth note pattern. That's G. I don't hear these anyways. Oh, because I'm in solo. Okay, solo. That's what solo's for. And I'm not highlighted. Okay. The reason I'm not used to that also, I don't like to make excuses, but it's not how Pro Tools works. So what I'm doing here is I'm just putting that same eighth note pattern. I went further than I needed to. And now I have, no, I didn't go far enough actually. Wow, really good for a demo right now. And instead of doing that again, I'll just delete this one and duplicate it. Okay, and that's about it. We're not going to go over anything else. So what did we go over? You set up your session, named it, you imported the resource track and cut off the silence using tap transients. You figured out the tempo using tap tempo, which you had to turn off elastic audio, which, by the way, if I didn't already say it, it's Pro Tools algorithm for stretching, for changing tempo of audio, not of MIDI. And we put in a basic drum pattern. We're done.